On my mother's dining room table in Kelowna, there's a wooden segmented bowl that I turned myself probably a little over 2 years ago now. And in that bowl there's about 14 or 15 different types of pens that I've turned. And it looks like it's going to get a new addition because I'm going to try and turn my very first acrylic pen. Now there's going to be some of you that will recognize this big mess on my table saw as from the chair series that I'm about halfway through. Well, maybe 20% through. I just finished doing episode number 5 yesterday. However, you may also recall that I got an order from William Woodwright, and I actually ordered 10 of these button click kits. So I was thinking, it looks like if I cut this right in the middle, in half, I should be able to turn 2. So that is the plan right now. And I got to clean this all up before I can get started here. Believe me, I'm not always this messy. Now I'm pretty sure that I had said that the next time I cut up a pen blank, I'll use the bandsaw instead of the table saw. So I guess I better keep my word here. And as you can clearly see, they're just long enough. Well, that certainly is different. Now, using sandpaper, that's the one of the viewer's idea. And so I'm trying it here for the first time. Don't know why I didn't think of that myself. A lot simpler than messing around with isopropyl. Yeah, a lot faster. Now I want to emphasize this is not clamped on tight. It's just holding this on so that when I slide the brass tube back and forth, it doesn't want to slide around on the wax paper here. Now the curing agent, it cured this end here, and this end here, it's still, well, I call it wet, and the rubber band helped to pull the CA glue out of the tube. Now I've got it on my fingers, but I have solvent for that. Now I went ahead and I did the second blank exactly the same way, so there's no use wasting a bunch more time showing it. Well, it's the next morning, and I'm pretty well convinced that the CA glue, even halfway up the tube in the center here, is probably cured by now. And on this end here, where I pulled the dowel out that had the elastic band around it, probably the only thing I have to clear out of there is residue. There won't be very much CA glue. And of course the other end, it's got the little wax plugs, so there'll be very little there. So that's the next step. Now I have two barrel trimmer shafts here. They both fit this cutter. This one here exactly fits on the inside of the brass tube. This one here is about 22 thousandths of an inch smaller. I just measured it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one to clean out the brass tube. But when I actually use the barrel trimmer in the drill press with the cutter, I'll use this one. I'll explain why later. Now I'm going to use my electric drill here with the cutter, and I'm going to be extremely careful that I don't put any force this way or that way, if you know what I mean, because these edges are very sharp and they will enlarge the inside of the brass tube on you if you're not careful. And then of course your pen parts will be loose and you're going to have to CA glue them into place. And also you have to be careful not to press hard when you're sliding your finger along here, because you will cut yourself. Now I made myself a little wooden handle here, and I can put my barrel trimmer into it, and it makes it a lot easier to hold when I plow out the residue or excess CA glue. And you just have to very carefully do it. And once you feel that it's, coming to the glue, you just push a little harder. And anyway, I can't describe what I'm feeling here. I think you get the idea. Now, the reason that I want to use this shaft rather than this shaft is because I don't need anything with a cutter on it. Plus, this one is more exactly the right size. The idea is that when you trim off the top of your blank, you want it to be at right angles to the inside of the brass tube, not at right angles to the whatever the outside happens to be. Because sometimes you don't drill the hole straight down the tube. It might go at a bit of an angle. But once it's turned down, you're not going to even notice that. Anyway, we're ready to do the trimming. Now you might think to yourself, well, why don't you just use the self-centering vise to hold the blank? It's already set up here. Well, the reason for that is because there's just no way that you're going to get this blank into the vise exactly the same way. And in other words, what's going to happen is when the barrel trimmer goes down into it, the blank is going to be held a little bit more one way than the other, and it's going to dig in. There's going to be a lot of binding going on there, and well, I think you know what I'm talking about. Now I know that the tendency is, at least it's my tendency, to think that once the cutter touches the brass tube, maybe it'll get a little bit better if I go a little bit deeper. However, that's not going to happen. It's not going to get any better than it is right now. All that's going to happen is the brass tube is going to get shorter. And then, of course, your pen parts aren't going to fit right. So as soon as you get to the brass tube, stop. Now these bushings are all the same size. In other words, this one matches up with this part here, and this one here will match up with this part here. Now, the taper doesn't actually start until after you get onto this black area here. Then it starts to taper down to the end of the nib. So the blank itself only has to be just slightly rounded over. And I've got the two blanks. I also have an extra set of bushings, so I should be able to do them both at the same time. And it doesn't matter which way they go on. How can you tell it's 4 o'clock? Okay, we're getting there. Now my scraper already feels very sharp. And thing is though, I've had at least 2 different guys tell me that I want to make sure that the tool that you're going to use on acrylic is as sharp as possible. And being as that I'm really only used to using scrapers, well, I'm going to take their word for it, and I'm going to sharpen this up just as good as I can here. At the time, I thought it was the nature of acrylic to maybe grab. I thought possibly the acrylic was melting and grabbing onto the scraper, but it turns out the blanks were loose, and I didn't know it. I'll explain in a minute. Now I'd like to explain why the blank was slipping at the beginning there. And what had happened was, I didn't realize it, but because these blanks are so long, and because I had this nut turned down so far on the threads, that the end of the mandrel shaft was just barely catching on this screw. And consequently, once the lathe started working, then it just pulled out. Yeah, I should have thought of that. Anyway, that problem's fixed now. So yeah, do this one now, the same as this, and then I guess tomorrow we sand. And I understand from the experts you have to wet sand. So I'm going to have to somehow waterproof my lathe here, because this thing rusts when you just look at it with tears in your eyes. So yeah, but this is kind of fun. It's working out better than I thought it was gonna.